Welcome, design 9, and we're looking at blocks 33 to 36 of the Kinship Fusion Sampler. I've done them up in my block of 4, so as usual I have the 8 by 8, 4 by 8, and then we swap them around so that when I put all my blocks together, all these blocks together, these units, it'll be a bit like a brickwork pattern. So that's, if you can think ahead, that's what it would be like. All right, so this design is based on straight lines. Sometimes it's called matchstick quilting. Depends on the size of it, I think, is more that relation. So or that terminology. But what I want to do is I'm going to fill these blocks with a lot of texture this time. So we've done a few simple designs, but this one is a little bit more in-depth than some that we have done. So I'm not sure whether it's going to show up. And I want to, basically, we are going to move backwards and forwards with a curve at the end. And we're going to try and do that in as much even spacing that we can. Right, so if we have, so our lines are going backwards and forwards on this section here. Once we get to this block, what we can do is we can actually travel up the side of it, and we could actually go on a diagonal. Now I know that's can be a little bit challenging, and I would certainly pre-mark it so that you keep the same, your lines going in the same direction, so you don't have some going like this and some going, you know, properly diagonal and some are a little bit off, because then it will look a bit weird. And then once we get back to this corner here, go back to doing our back and forth lines is often how I refer to it. But it's essentially straight line quilting, but continuously. And we're using the hopping foot, so they're not going to be perfectly straight, but they're going to be straight enough. This corner block here, look, you could probably do all of them in this design. So it could be filled with texture going in different directions. So if this block, the small one, and this corner one are all going in a diagonal fashion, then these blocks here can very simply go in the other direction. So if you don't want to do that, then what you can do is incorporate one of the others, like the continuous curves or something else in there. So what I might do, we could actually do this one. We could make it bigger. That will certainly show off a variation. The size of your gap is how you can vary this design. So if you do it much wider, and we will talk about a bit of a secret in how to get that spacing as evenly as possible. So with this one here, this block we went this way and then this way. So this one we do need to go the other way. And I do think because it is a smaller strip, I think it is quite appropriate to bring the spacing in so that it's keeping in line with the proportion of the block. So let me just zoom in on that. Hopefully that will show up on this block here. Got my diagonal lines on this one, and you can see the blue lines. Don't worry about these crosses, I was testing the pen. And the blue lines on these ones as well. And this has the diagonal. This one will have diagonal. And basically every piece in this block is then quilted. All right, let's move on to block 34. I'm just checking the number because I haven't marked on this one. And I'm probably going to need to use the white one. This one, I would probably do, I think if we did all of these, I like how this block has this arrangement of the small squares. So I think if you had these all going in one direction and the other blocks going in the other direction, then you're going to get a nice contrast of texture. And let's face it, quilting is all about texture. So what's going to be easiest actually is if these ones here are the ones that are going up and down. We're going to be able to cover the most amount of space in any quilting path by doing, so this corner here we'll need to jump up. We could either travel across here and finish, which may be what I will do, and we would then need to probably sneak into here and travel across and then do this one as well. And then so this, all of these blocks are quilted to here. So then this row, I'll just do it on the yellow one so you can see, zooming in. So these ones here are going this way, but if the yellow one goes the other way, then we are, we've created a difference in texture. This will require, even if you work up from these blocks here to this one, you are going to have to sneak across here to be able to keep going with the rest of the blocks. So these will all go this way and these ones go the opposite direction. All right, for block 35, yes, got that right. I think we would probably do, this piece is going to end up quite heavily quilted by the time we're done, but I think that's going to be okay. I think, again, let's do lots of directions, because that's what this quilting design is all about, direction. If we have the fish going diagonally, we can work our way all the way across. Plus also my piecing has, I've got a line on my quilting, on my fabric that way anyway. And then let's change direction, have all the rest of the background just go in one direction. So if we have them all going down. So I'm not drawing it all in. If it's easier, draw it, and you want to do it by eye, that's okay. Just draw yourself some lines that are straight. I don't know if you can see that. It just means that when you get there, you know if you're going slightly off and you can straighten up your lines. If it's just a little bit off, it won't be matter. But if you work your way and then by the time you get to this side of the block, you're going really crooked, that's going to be really noticeable. So that's what I would do with this one straight up and down as well, and also this background. And that will create that contrast for the piecing. And this one, again, much the same. If this is going backwards and forwards, and then I would probably choose one of these. So these three, maybe they can go up and down, and these three can go crossways. And that's, and then finish off down here. So basically this unit will end up quite heavily quilted, and we can, it's definitely not going to go anywhere. All right, I'll get on to marking the other one and then we'll get sewing. Alrighty, here we go with block 34. Now, I've just had a quick look at the quilt path, and the way I'm going to quilt it, I'm going to do this internal section of sideways, then I'm going to work my way down those small squares back this way, and then complete the longer bits back up again. So essentially, the way I'm working across the quilt, the block is to go this way, and then this way again. I hope that made sense. You'll see as I quilt it. So this is block 34 if you're wondering. All right. Sometimes with the designs you sort of think, okay, what's the best place to stop? I have been stopping at the top of a curve. You could stop just before a curve, so like, you know, just here, or just after a curve, so that you're still in a straight path line. If you're comfortable stopping at the top of a curve, you know, for when you need to reposition your hands, then do that. Then just, you know, get going again. Finish off the curve gently. I could make my machine silent for you, I would, but I can't. Now, if you need to make your spacing, you know, change a little bit so that you can fit in to the space, that's okay. All right, so that time I've stopped just before a curve. Now I sort of want to go down again to this one, so I'm actually going to travel along. I'm just going to back up a little bit and sort of change direction partway through. Now this one I want to end here so that I can go this way. Look at that. Let's get rid of these starting threads so that they're out of the way. Alrighty, so now I'm going to work my way down the small squares that are part of this block. So this is certainly one that we want to end in this bottom corner each time. So we do need to try and space our lines so that we do end up there as much as possible. Stop and reposition your hands every time you need to, you know, as much as it is comfortable for you. Don't be afraid to do that. If it means that one of your lines is a little bit closer together, in the grand scheme of things, no one will notice. And if someone else is looking at your quilt that closely, they're probably another quilter. In which case you can have a discussion about priorities. Otherwise, you could tell them that you are not concerned. So this one I did end up actually in the other corner, so I'm actually just going to backtrack down because I need to get to this corner anyway, so we have to go down here. Might just take this safety pin out of the way. You can see we've changed directions there, and as I mentioned, this entire unit is going to be quite heavily quilted with all of these lines. You will find that you go through a lot more thread. You may need to change your bobbin a lot more. I've gone through the first two shapes, so we're getting a shorter distance for quilting. And we will go across here. And now we're going to finish off the last three portions of block 34, I think it is. Right, I'm getting close to the edge, so I just need to reposition so that I can actually handle it. Ooh, look at that. Block 35. Now, I sort of think of this one as like two fish kissing. And so I do think by accentuating these triangles this way, you can really play up on that depending on the fabric that you have chosen. All right, I've done my locking stitches, and again, all I've done is mark some direction lines on these blocks so that I can make sure I'm going in the right direction. Work out your spacing. If you want to do it larger or smaller, it can certainly change how it looks. Alright, so I've done most of this, and I'm not going to do any more. I'm just going to sneak into that point of the triangle, because any more and you actually lose the effect of the lines. Now, whilst there are these three pieces here, I'm going to treat them as one unit. So I'm going to come downwards. I do need to be careful going all the way back so that I don't go over the piecing line, as in quilt past it. So when you are stitching backwards, just keep an eye out for where that seam line is and be ready to make your curve. Almost like you have to give yourself space to be able to do it. I need to get to here and reposition my hands. There you go. My spacing changed a little bit, but that's okay. And then we're going to work our way back across the other sort of fish shape. Keeping in mind I was treating those three pieces as one. There you go. So I think it's a bit of a misconception that when you're quilting you have to treat each piece or each portion of piecing, but you don't actually need to. You can treat them as one, basically. All right, I'm actually going to go this way on this one and the opposite way on the other one. So I need to do this triangle first. that seam line, keeping in mind that that would be hidden on an actual quilt because we'd be using a complementary thread, more than likely. So it is handy to be able to do this in either direction, left or right, and not have to, you know, it's just a good skill to have if you can do any quilting in almost any direction. Have I just quilted? No, I thought for a second there I'd quilted my backing down, but I hadn't. Alright, in saying that, I am going to turn this around because I want to be able to see the block a little bit easier. And so this is going to be quite like a longer line. But not impossible to do. Keeping in mind that I'm using an older Janome. I have no special table, and I'm going to reposition my hands. I am using a hopping foot. So when I bought this machine, it was, I don't remember what year it was, but this was a bit of a special quilters edition at that point, and it came with the walking foot, or the extra quilting accessories, which was the walking foot and the hopping foot. Now I want to end up down here, so I'm going to squeeze in an extra one so that I ended up here, because then I can finish these blocks. All right. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be fairly full on and covered, this block. And from there I am going to once again sneak down there and down what will be a seam line, and we're going to do this way. I think I will, no, I'm going to keep it this way. Just take out that safety pin so it's not in the way. It's a little bit challenging here because I didn't have a lot of extra fabric, so that does make it a little bit harder to grip. Once I get the first few rows done, it will get easier. There we go. I am right-handed, so I do seem to guide better with my right hand. Okay, and there we have block 35. Block 36. Let's go through this one. So we're going to go across the top here. might do, because we're also going to do different sizes, different directions, but also going to do a couple of different sizes to really accentuate the difference. So the downward ones I'm going to do quite large. Which for me is actually really hard. I need to go down the seam line. Not sure that that's a favorite. That's okay. It's good to show you what I mean though. All right, so that is quite large. So let's do, I wonder if we could do the same large, whether we should stick with the smaller ones. Should we do them quite narrow? In true, almost matchstick quilting style. Certainly takes longer. Well, you certainly do get a contrast there, don't you? Not a bad contrast. That was block 36. Okay, let's chat comparing of blocks. So with the practice piece, I had these ones all done as diagonal. You could still do that. When I got to this one, I decided that that was going to be too much. So I started here, did this lot. I did simple continuous curves and then finished this side, did the larger ones still the same, and I did the same. So in each of these they actually have continuous curves instead, which I think probably balances it all a little bit more. So actually changed all of the blocks just slightly. So for block 34, let's put them side by side. Initially, and I still like this way, but when I got to doing this one, I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to leave it unquilted because I'd done these quite close together. So my thread path was simply, they still started doing this lot. I finished in this corner here, and then in the video you'll see I actually made a bit of a boo-boo. I was going to go this way and then realized, so you need to travel across to here and then complete the rest of the block. So the practice piece has where I've gone the opposite direction. I do like the change in direction, but I also like the change in the texture where you've left some of the block unquilted. For this one, again, design ideas struck partway through and I needed to follow it. So in our original practice piece, I started with the fish shape, let's call it that, and worked our way across and then filled the background. With the coloured block, what I ended up doing was I have drawn myself in the fish shape. So I started here and I worked my way across the block. Then I have travelled down to here, or up to here, and then because I drew the triangle and the smaller triangle, so I've actually created two more fish shapes that fill those larger squares. So that is a way that you can break up a bigger space by repeating what's already in your block. So we've already got this shape here, so by repeating it here, we end up with this fantastic effect in the middle of the block. So I actually really like this change. I've left these ones unquilted, which I quite like as well. So for block 36, where in the practice piece we changed the size and the direction, which created a bit of contrast. I ended up just doing a continuous curve in those ones, partly because I've already got prints in these ones. The quilting shows up quite nicely on this tone on tone, but it's quite lost in these ones. So I did not continue with that change. And I have just done them as a normal sort of spacing. Let me just zoom in slightly. So there you go. So this one really does show you how you can change up this design and it creates awesome texture. It feels fantastic when you have a quilt with all of this on it. It really does. And this is probably my favorite block out of these four, but I do quite like the effect of the dense quilting as well. So backwards and forwards lines, or back and forth straight line quilting, but with your hopping foot. Have a go, have fun, have a practice first, and enjoy your quilting.